Hello and welcome to Inside MMA. I'm Kenny Rice, joined as always by the titan of the tap out. Boss Rutan.
Tap out right there.
You're all spunky today.
Yes, I have to.
Got some holiday shopping done already?
No, I did not.
All right, more tap out. We're tapping out on holiday shopping, but with us, another stellar group of MMA masters, including a man who is fresh off his UFC 78 win. He is one of the top-ranked welterweights in the entire world. Carl Parisian joins us. Hello, Carl. Welcome into the show.
Thanks for having me.
Here's the guy who trains the trainers, the man the special forces call on when they need an expert. He is ours today, Amir Perets. Welcome, Amir.
Good to be here.
And the editor of ProElite.com. He is also the MMA writer for CBSSports.com, Sam Kaplan. Sam, welcome in.
Thank you, Kenny.
All right, lots to talk about today. Before we get our panel's opinion, you know, if we had $1 for every time we talked about Fedor on this show, well, this is the 14th show, we'd have $14. Let's go now to Ron Kruk inside MMA News Center to talk more about Fedor and the rest of the top stories. Ron?
Thanks, Kenny. As we count down the days until Fedor Emelianenko returns to competition, New Year's Eve in Japan and live on HDNet, we are closer to finding out who his opponent will be. As rumors continued to fly around the internet, Inside MMA caught up with the man helping to make this bout possible, the president and CEO of M1 Global, Monty Cox. Wanting to put any speculation to rest, I asked him who will be getting into the ring against Fedor December 31st.
I'd like to start off by saying that there's a lot of politics in Japan right now, and so in picking an opponent, there were a few things we had to consider. To get this on national television, it's a fight that had to be presented by K1. So we needed a K1 fighter to fight Fedor. And because they just held the Grand Prix, we kind of had to wait until the Grand Prix finished to actually know which guy we were going to get and such. But we're going to go with Choi, the 7'2" Korean that went to a decision with Lebanner in the quarterfinals of the Grand Prix.
Monty, this could be a very intriguing matchup for Fedor, taking on the 7'2", 360-pound Hongman Choi. Now, yes, he only has a few MMA bouts to his credit, but this guy is an experienced kickboxer. Give us your take on this fight.
You know, it's funny because you read on the message boards and stuff that people actually calling Choi a can and things like that. I mean, it couldn't be anything further from the truth. Anytime you're 7'2", you know, 350 pounds, this is a pretty scary guy. And he's beaten guys the level of Ernesto Hoost and such in K1. So, you know, a guy that size lands a solid punch, and you never know what's going to happen. So I think Fedor is the best in the world for a reason. I think he's very, very quick. I think the interesting part is how he's going to attack somebody that's over a foot taller and 100 pounds bigger, and just see, you know, what way he uses to try to beat him.
Monty, the last time Fedor was in the ring was in April when he beat Matt Lindland. Now that you have signed him to a long-term deal, I know you want him to be more active. What are your plans for Fedor in 2008, and do you have any opponents on the radar?
Well, right now, the plans for 2008 are to do 3 fights with Fedor. M1 Global will do other fights, but not headlined by Fedor. So 3 fights. Right now, things are bouncing around. You know, the more and more ideas are coming to the surface as far as who he could fight. But the guys that everyone's been mentioning, the Josh Barnett would be a great opponent. I think that Ben Rothwell would be a great opponent. Jeff Munson creates an interesting matchup because of his good wrestling and submissions. Pedro Hizzo is a great stand-up fighter and would certainly challenge him there. I disagree with what some of the message boards say. I think there are a lot of good guys out there, quality heavyweights, that can make really good fights with Fedor.
The HDNet Fights Fedor Returns card is stacked from top to bottom. Besides Fedor's bout, officially announced fights include undefeated Gilbert Melendez taking on Mitsuhiro Ishida, and Inside MMA's number 8 ranked lightweight JZ Cavalcanti and number 9 ranked Shinya Aoki, who hasn't lost since 2005. Another major fight announced this week came from Dana White and the UFC. It's official. UFC light heavyweight champion Quentin Rampage Jackson will defend his belt against fan favorite Forrest Griffin. This bout will take place after the two face off as coaches on the Ultimate Fighter 7 reality TV show. The series begins production in January and will air in April 2008. Jackson will defend his belt at the conclusion of the series, while Griffin will return to the program that made him an MMA star, having won the first season of Tough back in 2005. With both Jackson and Griffin winning almost half their bouts by way of TKO or knockout, expect some fireworks in this one. And now breaking news from the International Fight League. The much anticipated rematch between lightweights Chris Hordesky and Shad Lyerly is off due to an injury Lyerly suffered in training. And finally, following the California State Athletic Commission's decision to uphold the suspension of Sean Sherk for testing positive for a banned substance, the UFC has stripped their lightweight champion of his belt. During a 5-month battle with the CSAC, Sherk adamantly denied any wrongdoing and believed he would retain his UFC belt. Even though the commission voted to reduce his suspension from a year to 6 months, the ruling still meant Sherk was considered a steroid user. With the conclusion of Sherk's appeal, BJ Penn and Joe Stevenson will now fight it out for the 155-pound championship belt January 19th at UFC 80 in Newcastle, England. And speaking of BJ Penn, he was sentenced to 1-year probation and ordered to pay $2 grand in restitution for hitting a police officer during a fight outside of a bar in Hawaii 2 years ago. The judge will allow Penn to travel to England for his fight with Stevenson in January. Kenny, boss, a lot going on in the lightweight division right now, but expect Sherk to be back in the lightweight title picture as soon as his suspension is over.
Thanks, Ron. Yeah, I'd say that Sean Sherk is a very disgruntled, upset, ticked-off guy at the moment, wouldn't you?
I would be, if they strip you from your title, yeah. You have reason to be angry.
Well, as we talked about, we heard Ron say there that, everybody expects Sherk to be maybe even more fired up when he gets back eventually to the cage. You guys feel that way?
It's going to be great because he's coming out of his suspension already in January. So you have to move on and look forward now and get ready to fight whoever wins this fight.
I think the person he should be fired up with is his attorney, Howard Jacobs, who does not come cheap. He's represented Marion Jones, Floyd Landis. This is a high-powered attorney and really did not bring a lot of evidence to the case. I mean, brought up a lot of questions, but with the California State Athletic Commission, when you go in there, you're already guilty. You have to bring answers, and the burden of proof was on Sean Sherk, and they did not deliver enough evidence.
You go in, you're guilty. It's not you. It's not the burden of proof is in a courtroom, so you're automatically guilty. You've got to say you're innocent.
Yeah, and they make you a little bit less guilty by reducing the sentence.
I guess that was it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was probably some admission there, wasn't it? From a year to 6 months.
6 months still is a big break for him. We don't know if he really did steroids or not. I mean, I'm not going to judge that because he said that he takes a lot of supplements, and that probably came up on the test and it showed positive. But other than that, I'm not going to judge for that. 6 months, I think it's fair for him if he really did steroids.
And he's had a few things to say, obviously, about the Stevenson-Penn fight that's coming up now to take over the title while he's on the shelf at the moment.
And it should be interesting because he's not very happy with BJ Penn. BJ Penn has been outspoken. He said if the suspension was not overturned, he does not want to fight Sean Sherk. And if Penn beats Stevenson, Dana White has already come out and said that Sherk is going to get that next title shot. So what's going to happen? Is BJ Penn going to relent, or is he going to make a grandstand there? If he does that, there's going to be huge problems within the UFC.
The Jackson-Griffin fight, I think that's a fight that a lot of people want to see.
I would like to see it because it's a great storyline. We have
all over the place.
Shogun, Forrest beat Shogun, and then Quentin Jackson, he lost to Shogun. So that that's the storyline right there. So I would like to see the fight.
Yeah, I think that will be the comparison all the way, right? These guys step in. That's what you got to look at. Who have you fought? What did you do against them?
It's also a great build-up since they announced that they're going to be the coaches for Season 7 for The Ultimate Fighter. So people will look forward at the end of the season to see the coaches fighting each other.
Everybody's forgetting about the coaching, aren't they, Sam? Yeah, let's look past the coaching.
Well, I actually have a question for Caro. There was a lot of talk now on the internet that you were offered that fight against John Fitch and that you weren't really excited about that fight and that you turned it down. Is that true?
I've never been offered to fight John Fitch ever.
Okay.
Right now, if I want a title shot, I can get a title shot right now, 7 months down the line. But I said that's too much of a delay. I'll get a lot of big ring rush, so I'll wait, and then I don't want to wait for that long, so I'll get a fight in between. I need a more guaranteed win. John Fitch, I still think I can beat John Fitch. I have more tools to beat John Fitch. Tremendous respect for him. I still think I can beat him, but I need a more easier fight than John Fitch, so I can basically a higher percentage of beating the fight and getting my title shot. I'm thinking with this head, not the head and the bottom. So,
boy, doesn't that eliminate all of us? Caro, also in that. So what's coming up for you next? What's going to be next on the agenda for you? When do you get back in?
Well, I'm kind of hearing rumors on April 1st at the Palms, maybe either Thiago Alves or Marcus Davis, one of those guys. But like I said, man, I'm never really dodged a fight at all. I fight anybody. You give me, I'll fight Fedor if I have to. I'll just put it that way, Like I said, I've been thinking.
Stay tuned for that one, by the way. Who knows the way the cards changes? They may be flying into Japan in 2 weeks.
I get a phone call.
Hey,
$15.
the money's right.
I said $15.
$15. Now we mentioned him again. Yeah, Fedor again. Yeah.
The money's right. I'll fight anybody.
And do you think you'll get your title shot within, let's say, the calendar year going through 08, early part 09?
I hope I do. I got to get this next win in order to kind of seal the deal with the title shot. I got a title shot 2.5 years before, and I tore my hamstring. I came back. I had to work my way up, where other fighters got injured, came back, and fought again. No disrespect to the UFC. I love the UFC. I thought I wasn't treated fairly at that point, but it is what it is. I'm not going to cry about it. I just got to work my way up and get my title shot.
By the way, we've mentioned that guy's name 500 times on here because obviously he is the man that everyone talks about. And what about Fedor? Guys, what do you think about Fedor? We've talked about him to death here for 14 weeks.
I think that's a ridiculous fight. What's Han Meng Choi going to do against Fedor? I mean, you guys put giants in front of the guy. He's going to dismantle him. He's the baddest guy on the planet. Put him against Randy Couture. I want to see that fight.
Which brings up the million or millions-dollar question here then. At some point, will it come to the point that boxing eventually had to, with Bob Arum, Don King, some of the leaders of that, possibly, boss, could you ever see the UFC saying, okay, this is our guy, he's #1, we are going to see if we can work things out with M1 and get this kind of matchup down the road?